Beans, beans, the musical fruit. The more you eat, the more you... Just watch the show.
Bigfoot Cooking.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Bigfoot Cooking, where today we are making beans in both a old style pressure cooker and the Instapot. Now, what's the difference? Well, I guess you could say this one is the grandpa of this one. This one's nice, easy, automatic. You don't have to think about it. This one, you got to babysit a little bit, but I figured I'd kind of do a little comparison. This is almost a budget cooking show, right? We're going to make 15 bean soup in this guy right here. Simple, cheap, really just food, right? Over here, we're going to make us almost gourmet beans. We're going to put a little bit of effort into it, add some flavors, layer that yumminess that we want. And well, you know what? Let's stop talking about it. Let's start cooking. All right, we're starting today's cookout by doing a simple 15 bean soup, right? And literally when they say 15 beans, they don't mean there's only 15 in the bag. That means there's 15 different varieties that you're putting together to make this melody they call soup. Also for this one, I'm using I almost want to say antique. I'm not sure how old this guy is, but I'm using my older, genuine pressure cooker, right? Because the goal of this is to have the beans cooked and done in under an hour. I mean, from hard beans to something nummy. And we're going to start out with our Cajun beans. Now, this guy right here runs about $3-ish at the store. And since we're not doing anything crazy with it, that's your expense, $3 for a dinner. Now, the cool thing is, I got looking at this, it weighs 1 pound, 4 ounces. My curiosity in this is, does it really weigh that? So I set myself up a scale to see, are we getting our money's worth? And believe it or not, in our 1.4 pound bag, we actually got 1.54. So good job on these guys actually making sure the product delivers on what they say it does. Because, you know, there's a margin of error. Yeah, right. Matter of fact, since we're doing that, let's see how our great northern beans are for the other side. This is a 2 pound bag right here. And let's see if it passes the 2 pound test. Oh, it does, but it sure doesn't leave a lot of room for error. But again, you got your money's worth. Now, part of the reason why I'm going to do this too, we already know what our Cajun bean empty weighs. Once we cook them and before we start eating them, yeah, I know that's the hard part, right? But once we cook all these guys up, I'm going to weigh them again to see how much our 1.5 pounds increased. So you can really kind of compare that to, say, the price of canned beans. Yeah, we're living in a budget on this show, all right? So let me move this and let's get started on the simple. Now, the first thing you want to do with your beans is rinse them off. Reason being is, I mean, you know, they're grown in a field. They're actual food. They're not made in a lab. At least I don't think they're made in a lab. I hope they're not made in a lab. Hydroponics don't count. But they're grown in dirt. And so we want to rinse them off before we load them in here. So let's go ahead. We're going to run it under a little bit of water here. Just kind of look through, see if we find any kind of, you know, dirty bean or something, just something that don't look right, because rocks and beans look very similar, and let's make sure we don't get any of those mixed up. All right, so now that we got our beans ready to go, we're not pre-soaking them with this, all right? If we were just doing this on a stove top without the pressure cooker, my recommendation for that would be take your beans, soak them at least 3 or 4 hours, preferably overnight. That way they kind of fluff back up some, and they don't take near the amount of time it takes to cook them just on a open fire top on low and simmer, unless it's winter and you're trying to heat the house and you're cheating using the stove. Well, that's different. But I'm gonna pull this here vintage pressure cooker out. Now, with these models like this, there's a couple of things you don't have to do on the Instant Pot that you do have to do with these. This is your jiggler right here. As it gets hot, this guy's going to lift up and kind of jiggle, hence the name jiggler, and make sure that this is staying under pressure. We have a safety valve right here that when it, like I say, if it overpressurized, that will vent. And if all else fails, they have a rubber plug right here that if for some reason you tape these shut, it will shoot that guy to outer space. All of that is designed, and I'm not trying to scare you, but all that's designed because these things do build up pressure, and if you leave them unchecked and unregulated without the couple of safety devices, things go bad. I don't know anybody that this has ever happened to, but those are your legal disclaimers by a redneck in a hat. And of course, the last thing to look at as we open the lid, there is a gasket that goes all the way around the top. Just make sure it's not torn or brittle. And this goes with the Instant Pot as well. It also has this type of gasket in the top. I'll show you that in a bit. But you just want to make sure that it's still soft and pliable and doesn't have cracks. Because if it does, it won't even build up to pressure. And that's kind of the cheat that we're doing to get these beans done in an hour. All right, so I'm gonna start this out. I'm gonna put probably 2 cups of water in here. Let's see. And I say probably because the beans are easily gonna cover that, but I wanna go ahead and salt the water. And to do that, well, you gotta have something to mix the salt in. So I'm gonna add myself about a teaspoon of salt. Like I say, nothing too crazy, but I do wanna give it a chance to mix with the water before we put the beans in. Tell you what, let's go ahead and put in our Cajun seasoning too, because I do like beans that are a little spicy. I would actually up this a little more with some additional pepper, but again, we're trying to keep a $3 meal here. So let's go ahead and slice into this guy. And in goes the powder. Ooh, that smells really nice. Let's see, we'll slosh this around some. All right, and now our beans of glory. I tell you what, if you can identify each one of these beans, more power to you. All I know is there's a whole lot of beans here. So into the pot. All right, I'm gonna add just about, because these are dry beans, they are gonna absorb some of this water and absorb the Cajun seasoning and the salt and all the goodness. So I am gonna cover these up to, I'll tell you what, we're gonna go ahead and put all 4 cups in there. Now you wanna make sure that you've got enough water covering the beans that as they cook, they won't absorb it all and then they come out hard, all right? So make sure, like I say, with the dry beans like this, you want 2 to 3 inches of water. If you were cooking them on the stove, you could do about 1 inch over the top. And of course, it's easier to keep your eye on them on the stovetop. Whereas here, once I put the lid on them, the next time we see them, they're done. All right, added another cup of water to it. Again, I want to make sure these guys absorb. If I got a little extra water, it is 15 bean soup. Now the lid goes on. Now when this guy goes on, there's actually a lock that goes into this so that when you're cooking this and it's under pressure, you can't open the lid. That's kind of how this works. It involves this guy here, and this guy here. Those are the safety valves. Set it down, lock it in, start a fire. We'll set these on here. And honestly, I don't want to put this on like full heat. I've got it about 1/2 to 3/4. That way it kind of brings it up slow. Once this thing starts jiggling, we're going to adjust the flame down just a little bit, just enough to where it keeps a slight jiggle going on, but it's not just going crazy. All right. This, we're not going to touch for about, once it starts jiggling, about 30 minutes of cook time, and then just cut it off. And then after it cools down for about 10, 15 minutes, we should be able to open the top and have us some good beans. Now, this one's done. Let's get to the gourmet ones. All right, now for our gourmet beans, and I got a feeling that guy's gonna start talking real soon. For our gourmet beans, we're doing the whole 2 pounds that I've already washed and rinsed. I figured you didn't need to see that again. That's kind of water on beans. But we washed and rinsed these guys, 2 pounds. From there, I've got a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic, a teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of Cajun spice. And this is where you could do whatever flavor you wanted. You could put Old Bay in there. I mean, whatever makes you happy. About 1.5 tablespoons, it was a heaping tablespoon of dried onion. I've got a teaspoon of liquid smoke. I've got soup bones here. And I tell you what, the butcher down the road, I really like how they sent the soup bones, because not only is it just the bone, they left a good 1/2 to 3/4 inch of meat around the bone as well. Primo stuff, love it. I've got 1 quart of chicken broth. I know, beef, chicken, and beans. we're doing it all. But if you wanted this to be vegetarian, you could leave the beef bones out and you could put vegetable broth instead of chicken broth. Like I say, you can change this recipe up. I don't mind. If you like something different, don't let me stop you. And then the rest of it is just time and technique. And the technique's not even that hard. For example, we're going to take our chicken broth, pour it in here, about half of it. And from there, we're going to add all our spices, our liquid smoke, our dried onions, which again, if you had fresh and you want to substitute fresh, go for it. Because believe me, nothing beats fresh, but when you're out, well, the dehydrated stuff works just fine. Garlic, salt, and Cajun flavor. And just like before, I'm gonna swirl this around, get it to mix in a little bit. All right, I'm gonna open up my beef bones and drop them in. Bone number 1 and bone number 2. See that guy there? It's not demon possessed. That's the steam making the jiggler work. Perfect, we've gotten up to pressure. I'm gonna try to turn it down a little bit so that way it's a little quieter while I finish this up. So like I say, on that guy, that's what you're looking for, is that the valve up top to be moving. If it stops moving, add a little more heat. If it's going crazy, turn it down some. So back to our beans, already washed, already rinsed, into the pot. Now, rest of our chicken broth. Now at this point, like you see, my beans are only about maybe a ½ inch covered. That's not enough. They will dry out bad. You could open up another chicken broth or put it in there, but in this case, I'm just gonna top it off with a little water. All right, that gives me about that much of beans covered in water. That should be good. Now, when you're also using this Instapot, if you notice, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, I may have to get a close-up, but there's a mark on the side of this that says, hey, don't fill it over this height. The reason being is as this cooks, it can boil a little bit, and you don't want that boil to get up into the valves in the top of it and cause it not to build pressure. And speaking of that, take a look right here. You can see that silicone seal that I was talking about on the other one. This guy still in primo shape. So now all we got to do, close the lid, and the same as this guy. Make sure this is sealed. And we're actually going to use, this is what always has my curiosity up. Nobody ever, like all the videos you watch, nobody uses any of the preset buttons. They're like, don't use them. I've had no problems using them for beans. So we're gonna do the preset for beans, and we're gonna let this puppy go. And by let it go, I mean, I'm gonna sit on the couch. I'm gonna relax. I'm actually gonna watch me some YouTube while I'm waiting for the 30 minutes to happen here. And then, well, I'll be back so we can open this guy up. This is not really complicated, is it? I mean, this is simple, cheap, because like I said, $3 for that guy. The beans in here run about $2.25, and then the seasonings you add will of course add a little price tag to it, but that's it. You could do the beans and the chicken broth and be out the door for less than $4 for 2 pounds of dry beans. Yeah, wait till we see what this turns into later. I'll be back. Where's Benson?
Today, we're going to be talking about beans. That's right. You know what a bean's favorite TV show is? The Big Bean Theory. Hey, you know what happens when you mix beans and onions? You get tear gas. Whoa. Let me ask you this. Do you know what type of bean you can't grow? Jelly beans. And of course, we all know the favorite song of beans. Let's see. Beans, beans. The musical fruit. The more you eat, the more you poot. The more you poot, the better you feel. So now you eat beans with every meal. I love story time with you, but now I need to go. I need to find the beaning of life. Okay, I'll show myself out.
You know, I never thought of mixing beans and onions to make tear gas. That's not been in my repertoire of thoughts. But the beans are done. Now, I say they're done. We still have to open these guys up. Now this one, we gave it 20 minutes after it was done cooking to do its natural release with the Instapot to bleed off the excess pressure. Pretty simple. You just push this valve Don't have your face over that, because you will get a steam facial and it will not be the look you were going for. On this one, it's a little more difficult. You got to lift the lid and kind of set it to the side. Now, this one got done first, so it's actually already cooled off. So we can open this guy. Again, if there was pressure in here, you couldn't turn the lid. So, we have our beans that are done. And now, we're going to actually see how much weight they gained as they filled up. Remember, we had, what, a pound 3, pound 4? I don't remember. That's the joy of editing. I can go back and say, oh, we had this much at first. So now, let's see how many beans we have. 2 pounds, 10 ounces. So basically, we doubled the amount of beans that we started out with by, of course, absorbing the moisture and filling them back up. Now, you tell me, 2 pounds of beans for $3? Not a bad deal. Again, this was the more inexpensive, I don't want to say cheap. This was the more inexpensive way to do it, with just water, salt, and the seasoning that came with it. So, but let's see how it wound up. Like I say, a couple beans. Again, I got to make a thumbnail, so I got to have some for that later. So, a couple of beans here to taste. Yep, still hot, so don't burn the roof of thine mouth. I've learned this over the times. Don't taste too bad. Like I said, I think I could have put a little more water in there because it did a good job of absorbing it all. A little bit more than I actually thought it would. But the taste, not too shabby. So it's got that, you know, that jambalaya flavor, just a little bit of heat, but not so much your mama couldn't eat it. Let me finish this up and we'll open the other one. All right, let's crack into our fancy ones. Let it sing. It has filled this thing up to the top and actually absorbed all the water. Let's peek in here and see what we got. Look at there. Water is just below the surface, which means I probably could have put another cup in it and that way it would have come out just right. But oh, let's see. Let's find that piece of meat that's in there. Come on up. Whew. Look at that. Let's see. Scoop this guy out of here. I'm gonna go ahead and set this inside of my serving bowl here. A whole lot of beans and a little bit of meat. We can go ahead and slide this bone out of here for right now. I mean, look at there. It has cooked up nicely. All right, now, generally, like I say, the meat that's right around the bone is a little bit tougher, but let's see. There we go. Look at there. Cut it with a spoon. Now, you really can't complain about that, right? But let's see if it cuts it with the taste buds. Whew. One day I'll learn, don't eat the hot food. But man, it's good. It's got some good flavor to it. There is a big, big difference in taste between, like I say, just having some hot beans to eat versus having some flavored beans to eat. I mean, like I say, it wouldn't take much to doctor any of these up. Be it, you know, add some more seasoning, add some chicken broth, add anything to it. But this guy right here, oh, you could bring it to supper at the church, I'll tell you what. And the good thing about this too, cleanup is simple. 1 pot. Well, 2 because I made 2 dishes, but 1 pot and whatever you're eating it out of. Simple dishes, simple eating, and simply delicious. I mean, I tell you, I'm gonna sit here, I am gonna gnaw the fool out of these, and I'm gonna enjoy my day because I know at the end of this cooking season, you know that Bigfoot is real and beans are delicious. Y'all take care. The reason being is as this cook and I figure you didn't need to see that again. That's